Visitors who are joining us from across the hall. As soon as they do join us, we will begin our press briefing today, so stand by. Thank you for being here today. Appreciate that. We have a few people getting a seat, but it looks like we are ready to begin. Thank you for joining us here today to speak to and hear about our new athletics safety plan. We have a number of speakers who are going to join us, and it starts with our Board of Education President, Ms. Brenda Wolf.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you all for coming here to talk about this very important issue of athletic safety. What we witnessed in the social media is not who we are in Montgomery County. We just aren't the people that you saw on the news. As a longtime advocate for education, and because of my time on the Board of Education, I meet many, many families, school district staff, and students. And it must be said that the behavior of a few bad apples must not be what people understand about MCPS. Our students are doing great things. Our students are learning at ever-increasing levels in the areas of mathematics and literacy. They're designing science experiments and testing what we know about our world. Just last week, it was announced that we have 147 Merit Scholarship semifinalists. That's something that we're very proud of. Our students are excelling, and I want our community to know that this is because of the good work that is happening in our system. Our athletes are also heavily invested in the preparation for their sports. The playing field is an extension of the classroom. Our students learn skills, they learn strategies, they learn how to analyze and apply flexible approaches to playing sports. And our community comes to a game to celebrate these accomplishments right alongside our students. They expect to cheer and applaud and enjoy the game. They do not expect fights to break out or to have to go through the police to get out of the parking lot. Post-pandemic, it's true, we've seen a lot of increased problems with youth behavior in school, out of school, and in the case of last week, at the football games, on the playing field too. I'm very glad that so many of our partners could join us here today in solidarity as we work to find solutions. I look forward to the discussions we have and will have in the near future to be truly innovative in ways to engage with our youth so that we never again have to find solutions to violence. Any investment we can make together as a community in our young people is time, effort, and money extremely well spent. Thank you, and at this time, I'm going to ask Dr. McKnight to come forward.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and participating in this press conference today. We are here today to talk about some really important plans that we have here in Montgomery County Public Schools to protect the interest of our athletics program, which is a part of our community. I stand here today just sharing with you the importance of that because just a year ago, some months ago, 2 years ago, we talked so much about how athletics became such an important part of our community when students were struggling in so many different ways during the pandemic and were looking for ways to show strength, to interact, to build team, build community, all those things that we know come from athletics. And so today, as we come and we talk about what we need to do to strengthen our programs, our students, and our community, we're going to do it from a perspective of how do we do that all together. Here as a Montgomery County Public Schools community. So as I reiterate our theme, all together now, I've been saying that all year. I started that out with a theme this year, and I'm going to continue to reiterate that theme over and over again, all together now, because I'm going to emphasize repeatedly that when we have to address, when we celebrate our successes and address issues, we can't do it in isolation as a school system, and we have to work with community partners to do so. So today, we have a lot of community partners in the room, and I'm so grateful that they are here, because that means them coming here, being a part of the conversation, also says we want to be a part of a solution if there are solutions that we have to come up with. So I first want to thank our community partners. We have many school staff here, police leaders, and others who joined us today to stand in their support for us to have a safe, orderly, and nurturing school environment around our athletics environments, our departments, so that our students can learn, play, cheer one another on in a very positive manner in Montgomery County Public Schools. I also want to reiterate a theme in our athletics program that really is a core set of values that MCPS lives by when it relates to athletics. And many of you know those core values to be known as RAISE, okay? So you've seen RAISE maybe on T-shirts, but I want to talk to you about what RAISE stands for, because I think it's not a more important time to emphasize what it stands for than showing the meaning in that in our conversation today. RAISE stands for respect and sportsmanship. The A, academic excellence. I, integrity and character. The S for spirited and safe competition. And E, equity and access. So these are the expectations that we've shared with our students, with our staff, and our athletes every single day in the school system. And we recognize that when we see unruly, displeasurable behavior happening in our games, it's contrary to those values. And so when that happens, we have to address it, we have to act swiftly, and we have to act together in terms of what we do. And I also want to say, after this past week, we've had a lot of time to reflect, and I just want to start out by saying, any sort of fighting, verbal altercation, any similar behavior that compromises our athletes, our athletic events, really are a violation of those values. That's exactly how I see it. And those values didn't just come from people coming together saying, this sounds good. It came from our athletic department and many others who said, you know, who are we? Who do we want to be? And so when our values are violated in some way, then we have to be very purposeful in how we address them. So we're going to come today to really talk about how we're going to address this from a community response perspective. And before I go any further, I want to take a moment to call out the names of our community partners here. And I normally don't do this, but I think it's important because I want everybody to know when we talk about a community of Montgomery County, who those partners are, because it's strong and it's big, and I want to acknowledge that today. So I'm going to start by asking, when I call your name, please stand. And you'll probably see it's going to be most or just about all of this room. Okay, and I'm going to start with members of the Board of Education. Today we have with us President Brenda Wolf and Board Member Rebecca Spandrowski. We also have our President of MCCPTA, Debbie Orzak. We have the President of our Support Professionals Association, Pia Morrison. If you could remain standing. I promise I'll go through quickly, but I just want us to show the support here. Vice President of our Teachers Association, Nikki Woodward. Montgomery County Police Assistant Chief, Parker Lone. You see there in the back. Gaithersburg Police Chief, Stroka. Principal of Gaithersburg High School, Carrie Dimick. Principal Intern at Gaithersburg High School, Chris Asienzo. Principal of Northwest High School, Scott Smith. Jeru Bandu, Director of the East County Regional Services Center. Luis Cardona, Administrator of Positive Youth Development for the Department of Health and Human Services. Philanthropist and community advocate Kevin Beverly. Community advocates and many MCPS leaders are here today. If you're an MCPS staff member or an additional community member, please stand. Greg Wims from Montgomery County Government, please stand. Staff? All right, point made, that's just about everybody in this room. Okay, you may have a seat. One of our other very important community partners, I'm going to have her stand. Sharon Freeman, please stand. So I asked everybody to stand because, as you can see, you know, we do have press conferences and there are always things that we need to discuss, but today we purposely, and actually since Friday and throughout how we arrange our work, we continue to work with many who are in this room and many who are not in this room, who we often turn to when we want to engage in more deeply understanding the full scope of what is impacting our school system, our students, and in this case, our youth behavior. And really importantly, we want to come together so that this group can help us figure out ways to deliver very positive solutions that make meaningful impact to our students and within our community. So I'm very grateful for that. So we are now in our 4th week of school, okay, midweek of the 4th week. And we've always committed to making plans and making plans early and determining what it is that we can do to be proactive. But I also want to say that while we are ahead oftentimes of making plans, we also have to respond quickly when we observe that adjustments need to be made. And we're at a point in which we're looking at adjustments that we need to make around some of our athletics programs. What we are sharing today is going to be a collective thought process, collective ideas that represents our best thinking, which I also want to say oftentimes evolve based on different things that occur. So today we're going to spend some time sharing that with you. I cannot say, however, that we've met and we've debriefed and we've been able to really work through trying to understand particularly what the events were that led up to an events that occurred on this past Friday night. Mr. Brian Hull, our Chief Operating Officer, is going to come forward soon and share with you some very specific details about what we've come up with after we've had a week of meeting with principals, students, staff, athletics, security, police, everybody who's involved in these incidents. So while this most recent situation brought us together today, we have and will continue to monitor the safety at all of our school events. We have been ready to act, and if necessary, if anything compromises our event safety, we are ready to act swiftly and figure out what is it that we need to do so that we can communicate it with our students and our families. Traditionally, all football games have always, for years, had a safety plan with a special operation plan to manage big games. So we've always had that in place, and our teams come together before those big games to come together and say, what do we need to do? What are we going to have in place to be proactive? This has been the practice for many high schools, and our police partners have been a part of that conversation for many years. But this approach is one that we see we need to look at further and more deeply because it's been a process that we've had in place for a number of years. And I also want to say that as we think about these new approaches that we develop, we also want to align them to the 3 priorities that I constantly talk about. The 3 priorities apply to this area of work: engaging stakeholders and rebuilding trust with our students, staff, and community. And we're going to have to handle that carefully as we determine what are the next steps that may look different than they have before. We've also committed to mental health and wellness resources for students and staff, and I started out the conversation discussing how athletics is so much an important part of that world for students. And this is all important because we have to have a focus on returning to equitable teaching and learning. And we know relationships, how they exist in the classroom and outside of the classroom, impact all of that. These priorities often elevate that we need to act in new ways. So we cannot wait, because our students and spectators who attend these events every week, they look forward to having a great experience. And we want them to have a great experience. This is a part of the trust factor that I often talk about when we have to discuss the importance of rebuilding trust, that we have to come together and share early what it is we're doing, why we're doing it, so that everybody can be a part of that plan implementation. When we share the details of what we're going to share today, that's going to depend on who? Our students, our staff, our parents, our community members, because everybody's going to have a part in how successful we are in implementing these plans. Students involved in fighting and violence, they need us too. I would venture to say that those students are the students who need us more, because in somewhere they're showing something that we need to respond to, whether it is a need, and we have to figure out what that is so that we can help them determine ways to be successful moving forward. So as we think about the wraparound services that they need and the supports that they need, a big part of what they need is for us to provide that guidance and support for them. So this is very much a part of priority number 2, and sometimes that extends beyond the student but to the family. We can teach these skills, but they also have to be reinforced by what our students see. And oftentimes, we are the models for our students. Adults must model the behavior and the expectation, and that is my expectation, that adults model for our students. And they must also communicate those positive expectations of what we want from our students. So this is the work that we all have to do together. This is the work that the system has to do, and it's the work that we need the support of our community to do. So as we consider solutions for safety, it became very clear that we must not apply yesterday's solutions to problems that we're working on today, and we must act out of being reactive and solution-oriented and not in a reactive manner. So I'm going to say that it's vital that we continue to preserve the important hard work of our student athletes and adults that are leading them, because while we're here talking about a challenge today, President Wolf started out with many of the celebrations that we have that need to be acknowledged from our students and our staff and the hard work that they put in our athletics program. And in that, we also want to make sure that we're preserving the culturally important experiences and excitement of the high school athletes. I can say that from personal experiences. I go out to games, and those students are going on the field, they're excited. They're feeling pride in their schools, and they're excited about a skill that they have that's going to represent that pride in a positive way. So we want to protect that too. So this school district is committed to the safety and security of students, families, and community members who want to go out and enjoy these athletic events. But we will not tolerate any sort of indefensible or violent behaviors, because that then becomes a violation to our community. So that is simply not welcome on or off the fields, and I just want to make sure everyone understands that. What is welcome, though, is spirited, respectful, sportsmanship-like enthusiasm for everyone that involves athletes, coaches, and spectators. So I want to be clear on that is the behavior that we welcome and we look forward to having present at our games. And quite frankly, I would say this is the vast majority of what our athletes and spectators bring to the events. So today we're going to bring a revised MCPS athletics safety plan to you. The plan represents enhanced security measures at athletic events beginning this Friday, September 23rd. For the details of the work since last Friday through today, we've developed these recommendations, and so I'm going to ask our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Brian Hall, to come forward, and he's going to share some remarks about that, and then we're going to hear from our MCPS Director of Athletics, Dr. Jeffrey Sullivan. And I just want to thank them and everyone for all of the work that they have committed to over the weekend, throughout the week, so that we could be responsive and be able to share this information with our community prior to our events on Friday night. Mr. Hull?
Thank you, Superintendent, Board President Wolf, and thank you all for being here this afternoon. My name is Brian Hall. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Montgomery County Public Schools. And I want to begin by saying that we as a school system take this very seriously. Anytime there is violence with our students or at our events, that is something that we take very seriously. We've been monitoring this from the beginning of the school year, and many schools have already put in place measures to increase safety and security at the games. However, the events of last Friday have prompted a district-wide response. Dr. Sullivan, our athletic director, will be coming up shortly, and he will share the details of our tiered response. This safety plan will be in place this Friday, September 23rd, as the superintendent noted, and will be in place for the rest of the football season and potentially beyond, depending on how things progress. I just want to say that this safety plan came out of a very collaborative and collective effort. It started with our district leadership, but it was very much in collaboration with our principals, our athletic directors, our police partners, and our community partners. And it's going to take all of us and this collaborative, collective effort as we move forward with implementing and monitoring the revised safety plan. As the superintendent said, we're all in this together. We all have the same outcome in mind, and that is a safe environment for our student athletes and for all of our students and our community members. And so as we work together to make that happen, that is the end goal that we all have in mind. And so with that, I will close and I will ask Dr. Sullivan to come up and share some of the details of the tiered response that we have implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. And I want to begin on behalf of our student athletes, coaches, and MCPS athletics as a whole, thanking everyone for rallying around our program. We know how much our program means to our community, not just our student athletes participating, but our communities. We know certainly coming out of COVID-19 and the pandemic as we emerge from that, and even a couple years ago, bringing athletics together, bringing our student athletes together in that engagement. We know how powerful that is. And we today want to hold on to that. And the safety plan that we're going to talk through really acknowledges that joint community that Dr. McKnight and Ms. Wolf and Mr. Hall acknowledged. And as we move forward, we're going to implement these strategies starting this Friday in a tiered system. So I'm going to pull up the first tier of some actions that we're going to take immediately. One thing we have found in looking at the data from these incidents is that the students that have been participating in actions that are in direct conflict with our raised core values have been from schools that are not the two schools playing on that night. So the first action that we are going to take directly addresses that. And so what we're saying is that all school-age children that are not from the two participating schools need to be accompanied by an adult chaperone. We will welcome the students from the two participating schools with a student ID or their printed schedule. That will be something that we will look through at the gate, and that our school administrations, our security, our police partners, our chaperones, we're going to work collectively to implement that to ensure that the students from those participating schools have a positive experience, and then again, welcome others with that adult support. We know that this is going to take a little more time, so we want to recognize that there's going to be a little more additional time getting into our facilities starting this Friday. Also, we know that the gathering and that our community, our athletic events are community events, and there's a lot of gathering. We are going to take an active role in having our students and our spectators sit in the stands. Minimize those opportunities for gathering throughout the game. We want our spectators enjoying the game, whether that's Friday night, whether it's a Monday night, whether it's a Saturday morning. So minimizing those gatherings. And then those hotspot times of halftime or post-game, really working collaboratively with our security teams, our police partners, to have everyone stationed appropriately and working through staggered exits, et cetera, to get our spectators out following the game. We have a consistent no reentry policy that we've had. I want to elevate that policy and also state that we are enhancing that by saying that spectators will not be admitted to our games after halftime. So those are some changes that we're elevating right now with Tier 1. Backpacks. Our schools, for the most part, have already implemented this, but we are system-wide not allowing backpacks into our athletic events. And that will be something that, starting this Friday, we are enforcing. I mentioned the staggered exits and additional support in those high-traffic areas. Each of our 25 campuses is unique, and that is why the planning for each of those events is very collaborative with our school staff, our security staff, our police partners, to really look at that campus, focus on those high-traffic areas, and provide those additional supports where we need. As Dr. McKnight mentioned, inappropriate and unruly behavior is not welcome in our events. And we're going to take that very seriously in removing spectators who do not demonstrate our raised core values. These are great community events, not just for our students in our schools, but our youth, our communities. It's a very much a celebration of what Montgomery County is. And we love that. We love having the stage at our events. It's beautiful when you come and see it. And we're holding on to that. So as we look through this tiered system, we want to make sure we're doing everything we can to keep that rolling. Our sidelines. We're going to have enhanced protocols around sidelines in regards to our school personnel, who is allowed on those sidelines, media access. We're going to work collaboratively with our Department of Communications to establish those procedures and protocols to clean up our sidelines, to ensure we know exactly who has access to our sidelines, to our student athletes, to our locker rooms. So those are the actions in Tier 1 that are going to be implemented this Friday. Hopefully we don't have to go any farther, okay? And we have that positive culture and community event established. If there is the reason for a specific game or district-wide, we go to Tier 2. Some of the actions in Tier 2, limiting that attendance to the home students. So using a similar process of checking schedules, student IDs, only the home students and parents of the visiting team of participants would be allowed to participate in that circumstance. Further limiting the spectator capacity. All right, and again, this is applying now to the fall, but a lot of the fundamentals and foundational points are going to apply as we transition into the winter here in a couple months. So we have to be thinking ahead. Teams that participate in activities such as brawls or other severe consequences, we're going to take those very seriously, like we did this past Friday when that occurred, and impose very severe consequences. Okay? Forfeitures of games, potential disqualification from postseason. We can't have teams demonstrating actions in conflict with our core values. Our raised core values drive everything we do. Okay? And that is going to be a collective focus with our student athletes, our Student Athlete Leadership Council, our coaches, our athletic specialists, our office, and me as the director of this program. Okay? Those core values are not just spoken, they are lived, they are felt. And we want that feeling in each and every one of our facilities for everyone that walks through that gate. Okay? Game times. This is a strategy that we've used historically. We used this strategy last year when we had a few events that we needed to tweak in terms of a game day or a game time. We will implement this strategy as needed. There are some constraints with changing game times: the availability of officials, the availability of buses and school staff, the availability of our police partners. So it's not an easy decision to just move arbitrarily games. There's a lot of conversation that needs to be put into those decisions. but we will make those decisions. We will make those decisions through a collaborative process. Hopefully we don't get there, but that's one of the actions in Tier 2. Tier 3, I do want to highlight a couple of things in Tier 3. These would be some of the extreme measures we would take if needed. Closing of concession stands, further limitation of our spectators, only parents of participants, or in an extreme circumstance, having no spectators. We don't want to go here. Okay? We're not aspiring to a Tier 3, but we did want to share with our community that we have thought through this tiered process so that it is very transparent, very thoughtful, very collaborative as we move forward and support our individual games as well as our system-wide program. Some of our decision points, this will be the last thing I'd want to share in terms of the plan. How are we going to make those decisions? We're going to look at the anticipated spectator attendance for our various games, look at the historical rivalries, historical occurrences of things that may have played out at various events, whether that's last year or over time, could have been last week. So let's look at what has transpired. Our facility layouts, our parking lots and lighting, doing an assessment. Our Department of Facilities Management, when I mentioned multiple departments rallying around us, that's one that has come and assisted us in many ways with looking at those components of our event management. And then finally, incidents in the community. This is not just about our games, our schools. It's about a broader community, right? So there are events that may occur during the week in the community that impact our schools, impact our events. And so through that collaborative conversation with our police partners, with our community partners who are here today, we can engage and wrap around each of our various events and the program as a whole to make those decisions. So again, this is our plan that we have developed very collaboratively. My office will be supporting our athletic specialists and our coaches and staff, but this is not a one-off. This is like our games on Friday night where we rely on countless individuals to administer a game. We're going to be relying on many people in our community as a whole to rally around our program. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. We know you have questions to ask, but just one reminder, we are sharing this important conversation with our own MCPS families via our broadcast channels. As you ask your questions, please allow me to get to you with the microphone. Does anybody have a question? Kate Ryan?
Thank you very much, Kate Ryan, WTOP. In terms of how this started, there was a discussion of students from other schools, not part of these teams being involved. Did this start on the field? And what about involvement of coaches? We have seen court documents that seem to indicate one coach has filed a complaint for assault against another in this case. Can you talk about that?
I can. We both are very well aware of the situation. So yes, we did have an incident start on the field. And so earlier when I gave my opening comments, I talked about the importance of us emphasizing with our student athletes what the expectation is for them. Yes, we are in an investigation of all events. We are handling this one in the exact same way in which we are looking into the behavior of those adults who were responsible for working with these teams. So that is something that we are investigating and will follow through in terms of our internal processes of how we address that.
Thank you. Kate, did you have a follow-up?
To follow up then, how does the goal of that plan that says only students from teams involved would be attending, how does that prevent the kind of fight that we saw happen on the field?
So great question, and Ms. Sullivan, I'll let you, Dr. Sullivan, I'll have you join in anything additional. So we absolutely see this as an opportunity to emphasize with our school staff the expectations of what we have for them as leaders for our students in modeling, and then also what they communicate. And so, of course, we're going to re-emphasize that, as we always do. Very interesting, one of our community partners earlier in our conversation, as we were discussing this issue, raised the question, you know, how can we help with the staff and knowing that they have a large responsibility to make sure they are modeling and working with our students. And so I'm sure through the growth of our continued shared intellect, we're going to come up with far more that we can do collectively to re-emphasize this and work with our adults who have to serve as those models and examples for our students in situations as such. Dr. Sullivan, anything else?
Yeah, just in acknowledgement of Friday night, we have the in-game situation and after game. And I think our safety plan is talking about very much our spectator piece of that. I want to address what happened on the field. When we talk about our expectations, our raised core values, and looking at that, we have communicated out the initial team penalties for what transpired during that game, a double forfeiture of the game for both schools, as well as the student athletes from both teams were disqualified as part of that on-field event. By virtue, the games this week are forfeited. So each school right now has 2 forfeits as a result of the on-field situation. And then Dr. McKnight mentioned the ongoing investigation that's further looking into the incident.
Any other questions?
Hi there, Kevin Lewis with ABC 7 News. At this time, is Travis Hawkins still the head football coach at Northwest High School? And I guess as a follow-up to that, is Will Gant still the athletic director at Gaithersburg High School, or are they suspended pending this ongoing investigation?
We can't comment right now on any matters of the ongoing investigation into the incident, including personnel matters.
Well, if I could just one follow up on that, you can't even give us the status of county employees, whether or not they have been, has anybody been disciplined, students or staff throughout this? And can you give us the status of people Kevin mentioned?
So as I mentioned, the initial actions taken as a result of the on-the-field incident are the forfeitures. The football activities have been suspended this week at both Northwest and Gaithersburg High School to allow for restorative practices at each of those schools in response to the incident. And I mentioned the ongoing investigation into staff and students, which I cannot comment further on that because it's an ongoing investigation.
So you won't tell us if anybody's been disciplined? It's just a yes or no question. It's not a trick question.
It can be answered.
Yes, it can. So can you tell us, do these restrictions apply simply to varsity football, or are they extended district-wide to all sporting events?
The safety plan?
Yes, sir.
The safety plan is district-wide.
For all sporting
That's correct.
football?
That's correct.
And just to follow up on this, I understand what you're saying about it being a personnel matter. However, this happened in a very public forum, and there has been, as you mentioned, videos, and there's a lot of people in the community who want more answers about what exactly is happening. And I understand we're here today talking about your plans going forward, but what do you say to people who say that saying that this is a personnel matter isn't right, given how public all of this was?
Thank you for that question. So the first thing I'm going to say is when we talk about an investigation, we have to protect a lot of interests in that space, and you all know that. I think the most important communities who were infected, particularly by the incident on Friday night, were the staff and students in those communities. And so a big part of what we've done is made sure that our schools are communicating with those communities who are directly impacted so that they don't have questions or concerns within that particular community, and I think that's really important. What we need to say, and what I'm saying to the public, is exactly what I said in my opening comments. We've shared the expectations of what it is that we expect for students and staff to model in their behavior. And yes, a part of that is that we set those expectations because that's who we are, that's what we model, and that's what we hold people accountable for. So in that process, of course, we want to make sure due process is given so that we can protect the interests of all who were impacted. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cheyenne Karen from DC News Now. Thanks for having this. My question is, how many referees were on the field that night, and how many referees are supposed to be refereeing games of that size?
So for that game, there were 3 referees. We are allocated up to 6 referees for a game. Montgomery County and surrounding districts right now are struggling with an official shortage in terms of the number of officials that we have available for our games. And we're working collaboratively with our officials associations to handle those instances and to try and work through our scheduling to make sure that we have as many officials possible on the game.
Mr. Seagraves.
Other incidents that we looked at. Can you tell us just holistically, district-wide, how often things like this occur, how many other incidents, maybe not as big as this, weren't captured on video, that you know of with sporting events that have kind of informed your decision to take this step?
So this has been something as we've returned to school that we've had a couple of games each week where they're not to this magnitude, but one incident is one too many. And I think we need to look at our security plans, and as Dr. McKnight mentioned, we have protocols in place. I want to acknowledge our principals, our school staff, our security staff for the amount of thought and time that goes into planning for these events. These aren't things that just happen. So there's a lot of planning that goes in. And this is an opportunity for us to stop, pause, look at our process, and enhance that. And we are committed to doing that and working collaboratively to make sure that happens.
Let's take 2 more questions.
Hi, Matthew with WSA 9. Has there been any consideration at all to adding more security or law enforcement presence at these games? I know some families have expressed that, wanting that in the future.
Absolutely. I think that's part of our assessment in looking at each of the games through some of the decision points that I offered in the presentation. Looking at each game through that unique lens and a differentiated lens, but also having a standard across the district in terms of the number of security personnel, our police personnel, as well as chaperones and administrators, not just in numbers, but where they're positioned, and working through those plans. So absolutely we're having those conversations, and we want to make sure, regardless of the anticipated spectator attendance at that particular game, that we are establishing that trust with our community as one of our key initiatives, one of Dr. McKnight's key initiatives, right?
And just to follow up to one of the original questions as far as the safety plan and addressing, we understand there's the disqualifications and the forfeitures, but is there anything at all to address the behavior within the football teams to prevent this from happening again?
Yes, and I think it's a great question. We reflect back on our preseason messaging and our messaging throughout the season, and this is an opportunity for us in my communication with our coaches and our athletic specialists who lead our local school programs to really emphasize our core values in the conversations we're having with our student athletes. And this involves practicing when something goes wrong, and having intentional conversations with our student athletes about when an official's call doesn't go your way, when an altercation may happen during the course of a game. How do we respond to that? As student athletes, as coaches, and being intentional about that, and practicing it no different than the plays that they're running during the course of the game. And so those conversations have been had, they will be elevated, and they will be ongoing across this program.
Kevin, you have the last.
All right, just a few quick rapid-fire questions here for factoid purposes. I saw some reporting that a knife was located amidst the brawl. Is that accurate? And if so, was it on a student? And then as a follow-up to that, I see this note for the new safety enhancements beginning September 23rd that all school-aged children must have a chaperone, the caveat being if they're a school-aged student from a non-participating school. So to that end, were all of the juveniles taken into custody Friday from Northwest and Gaithersburg, or were they from other high schools?
Great, thank you for that. We are not going to comment on any arrests or police actions, so those questions can be directed towards law enforcement.
And as to the knife, are there any other weapons located?
Again, not going to comment on potentially open investigations by our police partners.
And why? Because I think that that's something that the community would like to know, if there are weapons located in the middle of this very public brawl that could have ended a lot worse.
Absolutely, and that's why we're, as you can see, taking this very seriously and putting in enhanced safety protocols to ensure that nothing like this, happens in the future, and if so, that we are ready to respond. And again, I will just direct any specific questions that may relate to charges from the police to our law enforcement partners. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you.